All right. Welcome everybody to the next Fireside Chat. Today we are here with Carly Evans. There we go. Had to turn off the own Facebook. So today, guys, we have a very special Fireside Chat. In the coaching world, right? It's like we want to get our clients to the next level, just like we want to take our businesses to the next level. And we're so good at setting goals. We're so good at getting very clear on what we want and how to get our clients there. But we often forget a very key piece to that puzzle. And that is actually realizing where your client is and emptying the sack. What is the sack? The sack is, the sack is what gets filled with potatoes, the emotional blockages, the worries, the fears, the doubts, the things that are preventing them from even taking the first steps towards the plan that we have for them to create that tremendous result. So today I'm here with Carly Evans. She's a specialist on this. And so welcome, Carly. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's great to be here. So
what's your story?
Well, I've been coaching since 2008 officially, but kind of been doing it my whole life. Like I remember real vivid memories of being sat in the school playground, being what's called in the UK the agony aunt for my friends. And I know that's not a term used over in Australia, so people don't know what I'm on about half the time. But I was that kid that everyone seemed to come to with their problems, and I seemed to just know what to say. And it just came out in the right way. People seemed to feel better when they walked off, and I felt really good being able to help people. So I've kind of always been coaching. Yeah. And I formally kind of got into it around 2008. I'd already set up a business doing energy treatments and teaching Reiki, and kind of came across coaching via the Coaching Academy in London. I went to like a weekend workshop there, and I thought, this is what I'm already doing, and I just loved being around other people who were like me as well. So that was kind of my entry into coaching. I then my background was in psychology, mental health, corrections. And I kind of my training in coaching was law of attraction training. So I'm a certified law of attraction coach, and I love the law of attraction. The law of attraction tools are amazing, and they really, really work when you're very focused on a goal and when there's no shit in the way, right? But who doesn't have shit in the way? So I kind of got to a stage with all those tools where I thought, these tools are amazing, but what happens when you feel so low that maybe you want to die? I found that I kind of really got into suicide prevention. A lot of it seemed to be happening around me at the time as well. Unfortunately, I don't think anyone necessarily chooses that field. It kind of definitely fell into my lap in not so great a way. And I just kind of found myself thinking, well, these tools that I'm using at the moment, there's so much more that I could be doing. I'm not just going to tell someone to think positively or do up a vision board, when they literally want to die. So I thought, what's the next level stuff here? And I really started getting quite deep into sabotaging behaviors, into the kind of tools to use when you really, really feel low, when you're having like a midlife crisis kind of thing,
Yes. And
where you mentioned that sack of potatoes, I really believe that we're kind of all born with an empty sack. Kind of sounds a bit weird to say it like that, but we're all, if you imagine like a Hessian potato sack, and we are all born with a clean slate. And over the course of our lives, things happen to us. We do things ourselves that kind of come from our limiting beliefs or the environment that we're brought up in. And every kind of niggle, every trauma, every angry feeling, resentment, hurt, betrayal, kind of is like a potato going in that sack. And if we don't release and express and forgive that stuff, then our sack just keeps filling up, and you get to a certain place in your life, and it kind of doesn't matter how old you are. You might be 8, you might be 16, you might be 60 or 100, and your sack might kind of be the same as someone else's who's much younger than you or older than you. And so you're carrying around that sack with you, and it really just weighs you down, and you might start a whole new sack because that one's full kind of thing, so that's back-breaking walking then at the end of the day, isn't it? And you just feel really bogged down, and we've all experienced that feeling of being really, really bogged down by life. That can kind of lead to what looks like a midlife crisis for people, where you've got the you've got the house, you've got the 2.4 kids, you're married, you're in a great relationship, you've got a great career, you're bringing in all this money, and you're miserable. You know, people seem to experience it at different times in their lives. Women kind of seem to be a totally different age bracket, I find, to the men that I'm working with. So generally the guys that I work with are, I don't know, between 35 and 55, I'd say. They work in trades, in mining, you know, construction, that kind of thing. Maybe they run their own business, and they've got really different blocks compared to the women that I'm working with, who generally are coming out of what they call like a black fog or a black hole of, you know, the kids are maybe 4 years old and they feel like they're just crawling out of the mud and trying to figure out who they are now, as a wife, as a mum. You know, who am I now? Yeah, so it kind of seems to happen to people at different stages in their lives.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's like the first step is awareness, you know, like realizing that you have the sack, right?
Yeah.
And then from there you can begin to clear it, if you will, so that way you can move forward and get clear on who you are and what you want to do here, what your purpose is. So, you know, for coaches and, you know, for us wanting to serve our clients, right? I'm curious, what is the approach that you help your clients become aware that they have a sack, right? Like, what language do you use, or just how do you bring that up to them?
Well, often it just becomes really obvious in the coaching conversation. So yesterday I was chatting to a new client who, her goal initially was to get into a relationship. So, you know, we could use all these practical tools and law of attraction tools around getting herself ready, getting herself aware of exactly what she wants in the next relationship. But then all this other stuff came up around her childhood and how she saw really shitty relationships around her. You know, her grandfather murdered her grandmother. Her parents fought like crazy. She was abused as a child, you know? So there's all this stuff that came out of that. And I'm like, okay, we can do all these practical things around attracting a relationship, but there's all this other stuff underneath that to clear. And so I'll kind of introduce that concept of how bogged down we are, and how, yeah, you can do all these tools to attract a relationship. But if you're not dealing with these limiting beliefs that are holding you back, if you're not releasing all the shit that you've had to deal with in your life, then at some point that relationship will fail, or you won't attract the right person to you in the first place. You know, usually a combination of both, because, you know, you don't feel like you deserve that relationship. You've got all these beliefs around feeling unworthy, unlovable. You know, there's so much stuff there that you've got to clear before you can really attract what you really want, or even get clear on how you want it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Wow. That's it's a very powerful realization. And so once you help them, you know, you bring up that, what is the next step for you to help them move forward in removing those blockages?
Sure. So there's a few different tools that I use. I love forgiveness. Forgiveness is such a powerful tool. It's kind of, I see it like emotional and mental decluttering. And I also love physical decluttering, actually ditching the stuff in your space that's really holding you back. That kind of includes your physical body for me as well. You know, doing a bit of a cleanse, all the crappy foods that you eat, you know, all of that stuff around you and within you is holding you back on some level. So there's like, I kind of call it Operation Cleanup.
I love it. Yeah. Have you read that book? By, it's like, I think Marie Kondo. You know?
Yeah. She's pretty ruthless with her decluttering. I haven't quite got to her level, but, you know, yeah, I mean, decluttering really, really works. And when you do the emotional and mental decluttering at the same time as doing physical decluttering, you know, I kind of find that I'll do a bunch of forgiveness work and then I'll just get this massive urge to get into my wardrobe and just chuck out a couple of bin bags. And I literally, without fail, will always come out with 2 bin bags full for charity, and I never go shopping. So I don't understand how I get 2 bin bags every time. Literally, I do this every 6 months.
Yes.
I'm surprised I've got any clothes left, but yeah, it just kind of, it goes to show how much of our wardrobe we don't wear. And that kind of goes for everything in our space as well. You know, what are you holding on to? Because your external environment, if it's full of clutter and full of sentimental stuff or stuff that you're keeping out of obligation or guilt, maybe gifts that you've been given, you know, that's kind of an indication as to what's really going on within you as well. You know, your external environment is just a reflection of your inner world. So, you know, when I worked in mental health for a number of years, I worked with a lot of people who were pretty hectic hoarders. One guy, you could barely get into his apartment, you know, and there was just all these newspapers and magazines just stacked up against the wall. You could literally not see the walls. And that was just a direct reflection of what was going on in his head. So much clutter.
Absolutely.
So yeah, forgiveness is a tool that I love to use. There's a few different ways that I use forgiveness. So there's writing a letter of forgiveness. That can be a letter towards yourself or to other people. You never actually have to give them this letter, which is the great thing about it, because how many relationships have you had in your life where you've just got like a barrage of stuff that you could say to that person that you don't have the guts to say, or you'll never be able to say it because you've never actually come into contact with that person again. You know, they've wronged you in some way, or you had this really awful relationship. And you can do a brain dump on a piece of paper of everything that you've ever wanted to say. I've written letters that are pages and pages and pages long. And then you can kind of do this little ritual where you basically say out loud that you're releasing this stuff because it's holding you back and it's not serving you anymore. And really, you're only doing that to yourself. You know, holding on to resentment is like literally throwing up on yourself and then eating it up with a spoon. Who'd want to do that? But that's kind of what we're doing when we're holding on to that resentment, you know? So express everything you want on a bit of paper, make a loud and proud statement that you're letting go of this stuff now because it's no longer serving you. You forgive the person that's involved. You forgive yourself as well, because we've always got a part to play in that situation or situations, you know, if it's a long period of time. And you kind of send them love and wish them well in their own journey, you know, because hurt people at the end of the day. If they're hurting other people, then they're hurt in some way themselves. So it kind of, the forgiveness tools that I use lend itself well to a bit of compassion for humanity as a whole. You know, we can all do bad things. We've all made mistakes. So you kind of sign off the letter by doing that forgiveness ritual. You can burn it, you can shred it. I like to kind of take it to a significant place to burn it. And it's amazing what it does to the energy field. You know, being a Reiki practitioner, I'm big on bringing in those energy tools as well. And it is crazy, the kind of feelings and sensations that you feel within your body and in your energy field when you do that kind of ritual are mad. It sounds really woo-woo and out there, but it's literally crazy. Every person that I've taken through this ritual, it's really, really interesting to see what happens and what happens in their life as a result of letting go of that stuff as well. Yes. It's very, very cool. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, I can imagine doing that myself. Like I might do that after this call. And like it's like we keep saying woo woo, but I feel like it's the mind, you know, like it's running so many areas of our lives. And so this stuff is so golden. So one way is to write a letter. Do you have other forms of forgiveness as well?
Yep. So have you heard of Ho'oponopono?
Yeah. Dr. James, is that
Can you spell it?
That's a better question. Yeah, I don't know about that one.
It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's a Hawaiian mantra for reparation, healing, and forgiveness. And Dr. Joe Vitale has written two books that I know of. He's probably written more now. One called Zero Limits and one called At Zero. So At Zero is the sequel to Zero Limits. And in there, he explains how he came across Ho'oponopono, how he learned about the technique and went really, really deep into the technique with a guy called Dr. Hugh Len. He's got a way more complicated name than that. He's Hawaiian. And he used to be a psychiatrist, I think, a psychiatrist or psychologist at Hawaii State Forensic Hospital, I think it was called, which now is no longer open. It's this really crazy story. I'm not going to be able to give it its dues if I actually repeat the story. Just get on Joe Vitale's website and you'll be able to read the story there, I think. But yeah, he was a psychiatrist in this hospital, and he used this technique on the patients there, and the energy of the place changed so much that the place no longer exists. So they went from a place, and again, this sounds really, really out there, but when you read the story and you find out more about it and you start using Ho'oponopono for yourself, it's pretty crazy what it does. So it's like an energy cleaning tool. And so it kind of cleans you from within and from without, and it kind of cleans the space that you're in when you use it as well. So you just repeat the mantra, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. It doesn't matter which way around you say it. You can also say, I forgive myself, I love myself. There's a number of different ways that you can use it. But at its very basic, that's what the mantra is. So sometimes you might just wake up and you're feeling really crappy and you don't know why. As a human being, we tend to overanalyze everything, and we want there to be a reason why we're feeling like shit. So we point it towards a particular problem, you know, oh, my partner did something wrong. Or it's not really about that at all, is it? You know, if you come home and the the sink is full of dishes and you lose it at your partner, it's never really about the dishes. So, it's about what's going on within you. So you can use Ho'oponopono and just repeat the mantra, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, just over and over in your head if you're feeling rubbish. It doesn't need to be necessarily directed towards any one thing. You can just repeat the mantra like a bunch of affirmations, really. And what you'll notice is you just kind of come down the emotional scale, or up the emotional scale rather. So if you're kind of at the lower half of the emotional scale, you're feeling in kind of anger, resentment, boredom, depression, whatever negative emotion you might be feeling, you can use the mantra just to kind of creep you up the scale to feel more neutral. It just kind of seems to take the edge off how you're feeling. So I use it as well if I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't get back to sleep. I use the mantra and I can get back to sleep really easily when I do it. So that's really cool. But you can also use it for specific memories that you have. So this is where it gets really interesting for me, because this is kind of how I really started getting involved with Ho'oponopono. I'd heard about the mantra years before I started using it in this way. And I kind of mainly used to use it when I argued with my ex-partner, which was quite often. So that's pretty much how I used it in the past. I learned this technique in a course that I did where you write down specific memories that you have, and then you use Ho'oponopono based on what those memories are. So who do you need to forgive within that memory? And it could be a bunch of people. It could be yourself as well. It could be a really vague institution, like, I don't know, the police or the greedy bankers. It can be really vague at the same time. So you might write down a memory that he had. Say you had a fallout with a friend last week, for example, and you write that down as like a bullet point memory. And then you think, well, who do I blame for that? You might blame yourself because you were in a really crappy mood and that led to this argument. Or you might blame your friend. It could be it could be like a series of events that led up to that argument that you need to forgive. And then you use Ho'oponopono directed towards the person that you need to forgive. So, it might be, my friend might be called Sam. I fell out with Sam last week. And I just kind of, I bring Sam into my memory, into my mind. And I say specifically around this memory, Sam, I forgive you. I'm sorry. I love you. Thank you. And you say, I forgive you because it's about forgiveness. You say, I love you because love is a high vibration. You say, I'm sorry because you played a part in it to some degree as well. And you say, thank you, which is basically thanking them or whoever it might be for the lessons that you're learning from that particular thing. And by releasing it in that way, you kind of just take the edge off it. You release the stored up, the pent up negative emotions that you hold around that particular thing. And then it just becomes like you kind of see more the facts around it, because we've all got our perceptions about what was wronged, what was kind of done to us, or, things get done to us, yes, but we can choose our reaction. So, we always played a part in that and holding on to that anxiety or fear or whatever it might be around it. So it's really, really interesting what this does for your life. So say if I'm working with someone around, like my client yesterday, around bringing a new relationship, then we might look at all the stuff in her past relationships. And that includes the relationships that she's seen and been a witness to, and, how she was raised. She might write down, imagine how many memories she'd be writing down there. There'd be pages and pages and pages. And then you forgive each specific memory, and there might be 5-10 people attached to that memory. So it's pretty ongoing work, we never really get it done, but it's amazing what it does for your life.
Absolutely. Yeah. The emotion of, forgiveness and of gratitude, that release of that, is so powerful. So I love that. So the first one is, journaling, writing down, anything, or any experience with a specific person. Right. And then the second one is now Ho'oponopono, where you say, I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I forgive you. Thank you. Right. Mm-hmm. And you can do that by writing down the bullet points of the memories, and then doing that for each person, that is associated with that memory. And so as you go through that, you begin to release, right? You begin to release these blockages. And then so that is amazing.
And it's kind of like going back to the potato sack analogy. Every time you do that, you're emptying a potato out of that sack, and you really feel so much lighter and freer, and all those things, you know, going back to how you first introduced the live around, you know, how as coaches we're really focused on goals.
Yeah.
Then all those goals that you're putting out into the universe, you know, you're sending out really clear rockets of desire all the time. The universe knows what you want. But if you feel really stuck in, well, I'm saying that I want all these things and it's just not coming to me, then you've got to look at what's holding you back. So what can you forgive and release? What can you declutter? What limiting beliefs are underneath that you need to work on as well? Because you don't need to keep putting out your goals all the time. So, you know, it's almost like if you do that, then you're kind of, you're going against the law of attraction in a way. You're then also going against the law of detachment, because you're really, really attached to that goal. And you might say, well, I've got this goal in my head and I'm writing it down like 100 times a day. And, you know, I'm doing all these things, but I feel really stuck and it's just not happening. Yeah. And we all go through that. So then you've got to look at, well, what's holding me back from achieving that? You know, do I feel like I deserve that thing?
Yeah.
What can I forgive and release from the past? So it's like emptying the potato sack. You've just become more lighter, more free. And it's really, it's weird to feel what happens in your physical body as well. Like I always yawn when I do energy work if I'm releasing stuff, but you might feel like when you're kind of bringing up the energy of the memory in your body, you kind of might feel like a knot in your stomach, or, you know, that where you feel that knot of fear, you might feel like a twinge in a muscle or an ache in your leg or something, you know, so there'll be an area of your body that relates to that particular thing. And then it will kind of release from your physical body as well. You know, on an energy level, as an energy practitioner, anything that we're holding on to, it kind of starts off in your energy field first. It creeps closer and closer and closer to your physical body if you're not releasing it. And that's how it then manifests as a physical problem. So there's so much crap that we can release from our energy field before it ever becomes a physical problem. So, and these are just the tools, some of the tools that I use to help me let go of all that shit.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, I feel like more and more people are becoming aware of manifestation. You know, it's interesting because over the past 2 weeks, we've been doing themes, right, for the Facebook group. So it's like last week was branding, you know, and that's very tactical in the sense of how to build a coaching business, right? This week is lead generation. And so originally we were structuring the lives, the posts, you know, around this theme. And then, you know, it's so funny. Like, I think it was Tuesday. Jennifer, I don't know if you know Jennifer in the group. She started bringing up, you know, the idea of energy work and, like, you know, releasing before you move forward. And then I said, okay, you know, let's try it. And then, like, before you know, it's like this is getting a lot more engagement. And I feel like what you're talking about is such a hot topic and so essential for growth and development. So I love it. Thank you so much for sharing what you have so far. And then, so are those the two ways that you use, or do you have more ways for forgiveness, or?
Those are the main ways that I use for forgiveness. I mean, you can do, like, actually I kind of call it a fireside chat, which is funny. You know, you kind of go into a meditation or a visualization and you kind of call those people around the campfire with you, and you kind of say, you express what you want to with them, and then you kind of do a bit of a forgiveness ritual with that. So there's heaps of different ways that you can do it. There's no right or wrong. If you kind of come up with another way yourself, or you just get an idea, you're maybe you're trying a forgiveness technique, and then you just feel like you want to add your own flavor into it, then by all means go for it. There's literally no right or wrong. It's about the intention of what you're doing more than anything, you know?
Yeah.
And then, we look at limiting beliefs as a big part of that as well, and how to uncover those limiting beliefs, but also how to release them. Because I think, I'm not sure about you, but for a long time as a coach, you hear all these things like, okay, you've got to figure out your limiting beliefs and then reframe them. And I thought, that doesn't feel like it's deep enough for me. I don't think I can trick myself into thinking a new thing when I didn't even know that I had this particular limiting belief, you know, because sometimes it's not our beliefs, it might be our parents' beliefs. I remember going through, when I first got into Reiki, I was learning kinesiology at the same time. And I was doing a lot of kinesiology work on myself with the people that I was practicing with. And all these beliefs were coming out, which just didn't make sense to me. I thought, nah, that really surprised me. It just doesn't feel like that resonates with me at all. But it would for my dad. And so I discovered that I was actually mimicking a lot of my dad's stuff, because we kind of do this thing where it's called biomimetic mimicry, which is a massive tongue twister, where we kind of start mimicking the people that we love around us. And we kind of hold, like I had back pain for years and years and years because my dad's got lower back pain. You know? I had this belief that I've got to work really, really, really hard for my money, and even then you can lose it all, because that's what happened to my dad. You know, so, and I don't want to take on that stuff. I want to take on all the really good bits that I know about him and just use those. But, you know, wouldn't it be great if we could do that? It doesn't happen. So, you know, so all these beliefs were being expressed that were not really what I felt were mine, but were my parents. And so, and some of them through kinesiology I uncovered were instilled in me when I was still in the womb. Like, how are you even supposed to figure that stuff out? So much of this is really subconscious stuff that we've got to release, that I don't think you can take a really deeply held belief like that. And there's real deep core beliefs about not being good enough and being unlovable and wanting to die, and all these real heavy beliefs that consciously we may not feel at all, but maybe deep-seated beliefs that are in our energy field. And you can't just unwind them by replacing it with a positive belief, I don't think. You know, you can trick yourself to a certain extent by repeating them for long enough that you believe them. But if you've spent your whole life up until this point with that belief in your energy field, I think it really needs a much deeper way of processing it. And that's where I'd like to bring in the energy tools to do that as well. So yeah, that's big work. That's not just a one session fix up generally, you know, that's a 3 month, 6 month coaching package at least.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the power behind that though is like, you know, I mean, I could see that. That's interesting. Biomimetic mimicry. And, but I mean, that's so true. You see that playing out in so many areas. I can see it in my life and, you know, my siblings' life and other people's as well. So, so the process for identifying limiting beliefs, how would you identify a limiting belief?
So sometimes it comes out in all kinds of different ways, I find. So sometimes just as part of a conversation, it's really, really easy to pinpoint the kind of beliefs that you have. Yeah. So you can kind of, you know, what I get people to do, like from a session yesterday, I'm getting my client to write out her cosmic wish list for what she wants in her next relationship, right? But then as a result of writing stuff like that, quite often what happens is you'll get all these things popping into your head going, oh, but I don't want this, or I don't want that, or I saw this in my parents' relationship, that sucks. And so quite often we're so used to focusing on the stuff that we don't want, that's all the stuff that comes up when we're trying to write down what we do want. So I'm getting her to write down a separate list when that stuff comes up of everything that she's kind of witnessed as a kid, everything that she went through as a kid, you know, and from there will be some really obvious, like flashing neon signs for me in terms of what the beliefs probably are. And you might start with a belief, like a core belief of I'm not good enough. Pretty much every single person that I've ever met, including me, has that belief. And when you think about how we're raised, it's really obvious to see how that belief is kind of pretty well ingrained in us. When we're good, we get rewarded as a kid. When we're bad, we get stuff taken off us, or we get put in the naughty corner. You know, we might be unconditionally loved, but because we're you know, society kind of dictates this is how we should raise kids, which I'm not saying that's wrong at all, but you know, as a kid, as a 1, 2, 3, 4-year-old, you know, the kind of beliefs that instills in you as a kid are things like I'm not good enough. And so that can express itself in so many different ways in every single area of your life. So I'm not good enough might become I'm not good enough to go for that job. I don't believe that I'm good enough to earn a particular amount of money. I don't think I deserve I don't deserve the relationship that I think I want, you know? And so there's all these offshoots of this one belief. So you could literally stick with that one belief and do work on that for about the next 5 years. And the thing is that you never know how it's going to express itself. So you might release it energetically on one level. And then when you hit your next upper limit of comfortability in a particular area of your life, then it will re-express itself in a different way. And then you work on it, you know, you work on it when you're triggered by it, basically. There's no point in going, I definitely spent a number of months in the last year going digging for beliefs that I could release, because like when you start doing this forgiveness work and you see the release, you see the effects of it in your life, it actually gets really addictive. So there were definitely times last year where I was going rooting around for what more can I forgive, what more can I release, and actually then you're trying to find stuff, you know, and instead of being triggered by it, because when you're triggered by it and it's really prevalent in your energy field, that's the right time to release it, because that's when you'll release it in the best way for you.
Interesting. Very interesting. That's awesome. Yes, I love it. You know, anyone,
I hope you've got a free day now to work on all this stuff.
Anyone watching is probably very excited to get going on forgiveness work. You know, because we can use it for our clients and we can use it for ourselves. And like you're saying earlier, you know, you feel like you've been coaching since a little kid. I feel like coaches are naturally born, you know, it's like you
Definitely.
you have that, you know, whatever you want to call it, that coach, that it factor. So, you know, that's amazing. You know, I feel like you've shared so much already. You know, like I said, you could play a whole day out on this. Is there anything that you feel, you know, for coaches who say they have a few clients, they haven't been in the game as long as you, what advice would you give to them?
Walk your talk and be authentic. There are so many, coaching is like the next big thing. When I started, coaching wasn't, you know, Tony Robbins was around, but he's been around forever, you know, but a lot of people didn't even know who he was, and Facebook wasn't as big as it is now. I mean, the internet has exploded, and with it, so has the get rich quick laptop lifestyle work from home dream. Yeah. And so everyone thinks that they can be a coach, because you don't necessarily need a qualification to be a coach. So it's a real grey area. I'm someone who's, you know, integrity is one of my biggest values. I was coaching before I got a qualification, but very, very soon into it, I got a qualification, you know, and I kind of already had a lot of qualifications before that kind of lended itself well to the coaching industry. So I think a lot of people, I know a lot of people think that it's really easy to do. It's not necessarily. It comes really naturally to a lot of people, but you've got to be really authentic with it. I see a lot of people who are telling people to do stuff and they're not necessarily doing it themselves. You know, I teach all the tools that I've used for years on myself, and I know that they work because I've used them, you know, and there's lots of other things that I might suggest to people that I'll make sure I go and use myself because I don't want to pass on stuff that I don't know if it works, or, you know, I just think you've really got to walk your talk. Don't just be selling this pipe dream to other people and say that you know how they're feeling when you don't, you know, especially in the depression, anxiety, suicide space. I see this a lot. You know, I have coaches coming to me because they know that I know my stuff with suicide prevention, and they'll say, oh, I was speaking to a client the other day who wanted to die, and I gave him this advice. Is that the right thing to be doing? And I'm like, oh, what are you doing? You know, refer them to someone else, because you can really say the wrong thing to people when they're in that space.
Yeah.
And not necessarily because you're not coming from a good place, but because the words that you use with someone who's in that space are so important. So yeah, just be authentic, know what you're doing. If you feel like you're out of your depth, then refer to someone else. It's great to have like a Rolodex of people that you trust, that you can refer other people onto. You know, have a psychologist in your Rolodex, have a coach who's experienced at, I don't know, whatever it is that you're not experienced in. Just see what comes up for you with your coaching clients and think, okay, I'm a little out of my depth here. Instead of trying to swim through it and act like I know what I'm doing, maybe I should refer them to someone else.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, that's one thing that we can get through the community as well is, you know, building our network of different coaches. You know, a lot of the coaches in the group, they have a couple clients. They've been doing it for a couple years, and now they want to scale. Which brings me to the next question, which is, you know, coaches like yourself, maybe you've been in the game, you know, 8+ years, you know, and you have a solid business, right? What advice would you give to them to get to the next level?
Read a book by Gay Hendricks called The Big Leap. Because have you read that one?
I haven't, no.
Oh, you've got to read that. It's a must for everybody, especially coaches, because it's not only stuff about us, but it's about everybody. You know, it's about what people do when they hit their upper limit of comfortability and how we pull ourselves back into line through sabotage. So I was speaking to a new client yesterday about this, and he's on the face of it really successful in a lot of areas in his life, but he keeps doing this one behavior that like is literally fucking up his life. Excuse my French. And it's the complete polar opposite of all the goals that he's setting for himself. And it's pretty dangerous what he's doing, you know? So, you know, yeah, we can really, you know, those sabotaging moments are moments that we have where we're literally going, what was I doing? What am I thinking? Why am I doing this? And we're scratching our heads thinking, I'm an intelligent person and I know how to set goals and reach them. Why am I doing this to myself? Because I'm literally devastating all the work that I've done.
Yeah.
So you might, for example, have an upper limit of comfortability in terms of how happy you can feel in your relationship. And you might reach that. And this is all subconscious stuff, right? So you might then have a few days or a few weeks or a few months or whatever your limit is of how happy you can be in a relationship. And you'll be having the best day ever with your partner. And then out of nowhere, you'll have a massive argument and you'll both walk away thinking, what the hell just happened? We were just having the best day of our lives and we've just had this explosive argument and we don't know if we're going to stay together. You know, other examples are you'll have an upper limit of comfortability around how much money you can earn. So when you get close to that, or maybe you're about to be promoted at work, or you're about to, you know, sign a massive contract with a 10-year coaching client who's worth millions of dollars, you know, then you might do something to sabotage yourself because it gets so uncomfortable energetically for you that you've got to pull yourself back into line, you know? So yeah, there's every single area of our life, we've got these upper limits around. And what pulls us back into line is our limiting beliefs. It's always about limiting beliefs. So it's about knowing your limits. When you start getting towards your limits, we sabotage it in some way. So there's kind of a few different brands of sabotage. You might overwork yourself and then get sick for a while, so you can't do anything. You might earn a certain amount of money and then all of a sudden your washing machine blows up, or you leave your job, or you go shopping and spend all this money, you know. So there's certain behaviors that we act out where we sabotage things and we bring ourselves back into line. It's all our ego self protecting ourselves, basically. So when you start getting close to your upper limit and you kind of start to really unpack this, I would definitely suggest to get his book, because it really explains it all in there. Then you can kind of see everything as being a bit of an upper limit. So I used to actually, this happened to me not that long ago. It was about 6 months ago. And prior to that, I'd read his book. I've got his audio book and I'd read it. I'd listened to it a few times. And I'd only ever been able to reflect on past times when I may have been upper limiting. So I was a classic overworker to the point where I'd then burn myself out. Or I'd get unwell, or, you know, before some kind of massive breakthrough happens, or I'd earn a certain amount of money and then I'd get all these bills and have to, you know, or I'd rack up loads of credit card debt and I'd have to pay that off, you know. So there were certain brands that I had of my own sabotage behavior. So I was kind of reflecting on the past and how it used to be, but I didn't have a kind of now example until about 6 months ago, when I was about to have a wicked podcast interview with Mark Mawhinney from Natural Born Coaches. And to me, that was a really big deal. Me and my stepson have been listening to that podcast loads. You know, it was that and Tony Robbins that we were kind of listening to every morning in the car on the way to school drop off. And I was about to have an interview with him. And it was 9 o'clock that night here in Perth that I was having this interview. And on my drive home from school pickup, my vision went blurry, and it was kind of, you know, when you put on someone else's glasses that are really strong and then you take them off and your eyes kind of go all squiffy. It was kind of happening like that. And it was really weird the way that my vision was going. I'd never experienced that before. And then I felt almost like a migraine kicking in. And I used to get migraines a lot when I was younger, and I haven't had them for years. I thought, this is really weird. I was kind of a bit of an observer with it. So I came home and it was about 5 o'clock and I thought, oh, I've got this interview. You know, I went to bed. I could have very easily talked myself into thinking, God, I haven't had a migraine for years, but when I used to get them, I'd be in bed for 5 days straight, couldn't do anything, black room, no noise, you know. And I could have very easily talked myself into that. But at one point I remember thinking, I wonder if this is an upper limit problem. That's what Gay Hendricks calls it, an upper limit problem. Or so either an ULP, a ULP, or a gulp, a giant upper limit problem. And I was laying in bed thinking, yeah, this could be an upper limit problem. I'm about to have an interview with someone that I really respect and admire, who I've been listening to for a really long time. And this could be really big for my business, and you know, great networking tool. It could introduce me to really next level coaches, you know.
Yeah.
And so I was just laying in bed, kind of observing those kind of thoughts, thinking, right, I can talk myself out of this. If this is an upper limit problem, it's not a migraine. You know, it's not really a migraine. It's tricking me into thinking it's a migraine. So I have to cancel and keep myself in line and sabotage it. Yeah. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to talk myself out of it. And what I used, the tool that I used then was Ho'oponopono. I just lay in bed. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And I just repeated that relentlessly like a mantra. By the time 9 o'clock hit, I was right as rain. I was on fire. It was one of the best podcast interviews I've done.
Yes. Yes.
You know, but 5 days later, I could have still been in bed with a migraine if I let my ego talk me into it.
I love it. Yeah, absolutely. You know, again, like it comes back to awareness, you know, and it's like, if you're aware of the upper limit problems as you're going into it, you can look for them and course correct. Right. So.
Yeah. And actually Gay Hendricks says in his book that he now considers all illness to be an upper limit problem. And as a result, he never gets unwell.
Really?
So that's kind of how I like to look at it now. And I don't get on well. And part of that is the fact that I do energy work a lot, and I'm always keeping on top of my energetic hygiene. But I can see the times when I have been upper limiting and I thought that was illness.
That's fascinating.
That's pretty cool. You've got to read the book. Every coach here has to read that book.
Let me put it in the comments. What's the name of it and who's it by?
So it's called The Big Leap.
The Big Leap.
And it's by Gay Hendricks.
Gary Hendricks.
And the cover of it is like it's 2 fish bowls and a goldfish jumping from one fish bowl to the next.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I'll see if I can find a link from Amazon and put it in the comments.
Sure. Because when you consider everything to be an upper limit problem, then you can get really excited about it and think, wow, if I'm hitting an upper limit and life is this good right now, I wonder what's on the other side.
That's right.
And you just transform it into being, okay, I'm not actually unwell. And, you know, maybe I've just recklessly spent all the money that I earned, but maybe this is just an upper limit problem. And what's on the other side of that, you know?
I love it. Yeah, because it puts you in a mindset of growth. You know, you're looking beyond what's happening right now, and you're figuring out, you know, if this is upper limit, that means I can get around it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's just an obstacle to overcome, you know, and then you can just get excited and think, whoa, I wonder where the next limit is. Because there's always another limit. It's the glass ceiling theory, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I was just watching, it was, I don't know, do you watch TED Talks?
Yes, love them.
Yeah. So I was just watching a TED Talk. It was by this guy who did what's called a grand slam, but he climbs, there's 7, you know, major mountains on all 7 continents, right? And so he is the guy who climbed each mountain the fastest in the world. And
wow.
So, yeah, and like he did it all within like a certain amount of time, like under a year. It was ridiculous. But what he was talking about is exactly that. Like the second you get to you know, one mountain, just remember it's like just an upper limiting, an upper level problem, right? It's just getting to that next mountain and continuing to grow, keeping the boots on. So I love it. It. Yeah.
And just when you think that you can't do it, that's exactly the time that you will be able to. You just got to smash through it, you know, like Roger Bannister with the 4-minute mile. I mean, people actually thought, I wrote a blog on this recently, people actually thought that you would die if you ran ran a mile in less than 4 minutes. They thought it was physically impossible because the G-force. Scientists used to say that, right?
Yeah.
It was like you'd melt or collapse in a ball of skin and bones or something, you know? And it wasn't until he did it that then suddenly loads of other people were doing it. It's just about, you know, do you want to be the follower, or do you want to be Roger Bannister and lead and think, no, fuck this. I'm not going to let this limit get to me. I know that there's something on the other side. I've just got to figure out what tools I need to use to get me there. Absolutely. You know, and sometimes that's stuff that you already know that you can do. And sometimes that's hiring a coach who knows more about that than you do. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of that, if you have a link to your website or to your blog or whatever, go ahead and send it to me, and we'll put it in the comments.
Yeah, we'll do.
Can reach out to you if they'd like. Yeah, I mean, if there's anything else you want to share, I mean, I feel like um, everyone's so well equipped with everything that you're sharing. So, I just want to say thank you so much for being on here.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me. Yeah, and I'd love to stay in touch with people. If you want to get hold of me, then my website is coachcarly.com. You can find me on Facebook under Coach Carly, or my profile is Carly Evans. Feel free to connect. I absolutely love meeting new people. So as do most coaches, I think,
Of
So
course.
yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Carly. I appreciate you. Thank you for being on the Fireside Chat with Next Level Coaches. We look forward to growing with you. And
Sure, me too. Thank you.
yeah.